Good morning, lacrosse community. My name is Ryan Berns. I'm the president of the Lacrosse Leadership Institute. It's our mission to empower all those that love lacrosse to identify the skills that you gain from the sport and use it in your life so that you can live the life that you want to live. I'm so excited for our guest today, Matt Holman. He's one of the directors of the MCLA. He leads the Southern Lacrosse Conference, which is my alma mater over here with ASU. And he's so involved with the game, from being an alumni of CUSE and San Diego State University. He's a part of Uganda Lacrosse and other international teams, as well as having his own foundation, EMW Foundation. So, Matt, thank you so much for being a part of our conversation today. We're so excited to have you. Can we start by hearing a little bit more about your story and how you got in lacrosse in the first place?
Sure, Ryan. How I got into lacrosse, that is always the question, isn't it? I grew up in Summit, New Jersey, and got my first lacrosse stick when I was, I don't know, pretty young, 7 or 8. My older brother actually worked for Brian Lacrosse when he was at Boston College. And he used to drive a delivery van down to like the Maryland colleges and stuff. So at one of the trips, they had extra sticks or something, and he swung back through New Jersey and was like, hey, you should check the sport out. And I just took hold of the stick and loved it ever since then. So that took me to a brief stay at Syracuse, and I do mean brief. It was a good learning lesson of how to go to college and never go to class, but play lacrosse. And then a year and a half later, I moved to California. So and that's been I've just passed 35 years of living in California. So I think I like it here and I'll stay, and it's my home. But I'm sorry, I'm trying to get rid of all these noisy windows so you don't get interrupted. There we go. But yeah, and then I played when the MCLA wasn't the MCLA. We were just the Western Collegiate Lacrosse League. And when I was at San Diego State, where I played my final 2 years of eligibility, and then became an active referee in the community. I ran a summer camp for 17 years. As you stated, I created at some point a nonprofit foundation, the EMW Foundation. I've also helped create the women's, or I should say girls middle school and high school league here in San Diego. I used to coach women's lacrosse when I was at UCSD, and then I coached the men's team there. And coaching the women's team back in the late 80s is when myself and another woman here, Dot Harrop, kind of spearheaded creating a girls lacrosse high school play in San Diego. And then obviously that took off on its own. And coached college, coached high school, refereed both, still referee when I can. It's kind of nice not being on the sidelines lately. I just told a couple of coaches on Monday that I'm actually glad I'm not coaching a team this year, because COVID is, when I talk to my friends that are coaches, it just makes me shake my head, because there's so many aspects that they're going through, so many that we just don't really imagine. And I spoke to one coach through overtime, Lars Tiffany, head coach of Virginia. He's our most recent national champion, since there isn't one in 2020. And he's explaining how he's navigating this, and it's incredible. Because he's worried about his young men. He wants them. He clearly runs a program where he's creating good young men, and that's what he wants to do. And the byproduct is they win lacrosse games too. But not having contact with them, and then, falling victim to the schools trying to reopen, and then they get COVID outbreaks, and balancing that. So all the coaches at all levels, MCLA, NCAA, are really in the same boat. So like, how do I connect with my players? Obviously, if anyone owns Zoom stock in February, you are now really happy. I mean, who hasn't looked up Zoom, and said, God, I wish I bought it back in February. But yeah, you can only do so much through Zoom. So I'm getting off track, but yeah, it's been a wild ride. Currently now, yeah, I'm the president of the Southwestern Lacrosse Conference, as you mentioned. I'm a de facto MCLA board member, and I actually am the national championship director for the MCLA as well. So those 3 titles, plus my own foundation, keep me well knee deep in lacrosse. So.
Well, I know how involved you are, Matt. One of the questions I love to ask everyone is, what are some of your pinnacle lacrosse moments, or what is the pinnacle moment throughout your career in playing lacrosse or coaching or any sort of involvement?
Wow. I guess I'd have to say there isn't a pinnacle because it's been so many years. I don't think I'm that old, but everyone says that. But when I look back, I can say, God, that was fun. And at the time, if you had asked me, I'd say, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. You know, like in high school, winning the state championship. But then you go on and you're like, shit, I'm at a national championship in the NCAA. You know, I'm standing on the sidelines. I didn't get in. You know, I was the 30. What do you get? You get to dress 32 players. I was 33 that day. There was like 3 of us that were the 3 that had to be in street clothes. We were bummed, but we were there. You know, we were part of the team. So that's a high. And then the game literally moved me to California through some friends' connections. You know, and I'm a kid from New Jersey that's never been further than Pennsylvania. And 6 months later, I'm on a plane to California, and I got here at night and woke up in the morning in the summer and was just like, you know, and the guy that let me crash on his floor was a lacrosse guy from Rhode Island, you know. Then I met a lacrosse player from Philly, and he was like, oh, I need a roommate, you know, and it was just lacrosse. Geez, you know, I guess I thought running the summer camp was really cool. We used to have 130, 140 kids for 4 days, and that had a joy to it, you know. Running tournaments now, I really find a lot of joy in seeing players, because I run not only the MCLA, but I have an adult club tournament that I do, and having players respond like you and I are speaking, and this event, I thought, yeah, this event I've done for MCLA teams, where it's kind of like a mini tournament in season, but it's for the Cancer Society. I've seen these shirts around San Diego and in Southern California, and like you just said, I wear my shirt on Sunday, you know, and I get that, and I'll go up to a player, I'm like, hey, did you play in that? You know, and I kind of slow play it, like I don't know what it is, and then when I tell them, they're always like, oh, yeah, you know, and the real heart tug is when I've talked to, I've run into 2 different players, and you know, unfortunately, they had cancer affect their family, you know, and they took the time to tell me how much it meant to play in that event, because I think one was a mother and one was a cousin, you know, it was a relative, was going through cancer treatments at that time. So those are definitely highs, you know, and yeah, and then just anytime you're around a new player, and they don't have to be good, they just have to have that smile, that look of like, this is a cool sport and I'm going to keep doing it. And it's not about, oh, the new player, now they're scoring 20 goals, in my view. It's just, the high for me is just seeing like new kids, and that's what the international game, now that I'm getting involved internationally, is done. And I guess the high for anybody in lacrosse is where the game takes you travel-wise. It's really bizarre, you know, but I referee tournaments in Las Vegas and Oregon. One of my favorites is going to Hawaii every year in refereeing. The game has taken me to Israel, which I never thought I'd go to. Wasn't on my list of like, I gotta go to places. And I absolutely love Israel. You know, I was there with the 2018 international team for Uganda. And while I was slam busy for 12 days, the couple hours I had to just go running or walk around myself, I just absolutely loved Israel. And still keep in touch with a couple of people there that I met, and I want to go back. So it's, yeah, you know, I guess I could go on with all these highs, but it's just, I guess what I'm saying is it's the whole compilation. I can't just say one time, you know. Yeah, there's just not one thing that stands out. There's so many. Excuse me.
I can understand that your life is just full of these highs and new experiences that are terrific, and
Yeah.
it sounds like you don't even know which next experience is going to take you to that peak, but you just immerse yourself and continue to learn and grow and see those smiles. I'll tell you, I like we said earlier, I said I have that shirt. I played in that tournament. I was able to play in a national championship game. There's all these experiences where, Matt, I don't think you and I actually met face to face until the alumni Jam by the Sea event, and now we get an opportunity to talk and get to know each other a little bit more. It seems like it's a cool life that you're living, and one of the big parts of this is you're involved in so many things, but you're a leader. You're building experiences for individuals to be successful, to try their craft at the highest level or whatever level it will be. What does leadership mean to you?
When you said leader, I actually got a chill because I think of myself as more, I'm going to say this, it's probably going to come off wrong, but I'm just more of a, I'll do it myselfer, which kind of like, I guess that is leadership in a way, but I guess an example would be with my foundation. I was running a youth tournament over Thanksgiving weekend. I think we did it for 10 years, and then we took the last year off, and then this year it's obviously off. But I had two students that were lacrosse player young ladies from San Diego State that I would always put out to the two teams, hey, I need volunteers for this weekend. You get out there, you get housing, you know, I'll give you a couple bucks, this kind of thing. You know, simple tournament work. And these two girls came out, and it was their first time working with me, and I had a couple returning guy players that had worked with me before. And they just kind of like smoked them with all the little jobs. You know, it wasn't like, I'd say, Ryan, you know, we got to string these goals. And I turn around and I turn back and like, guys, string the damn goal. You know, I didn't have to tell them 3 times or they'd be, the girls were like, goals were strong. They'd carry them out to the field. And I turn around, like, oh, they've already done that. And it was funny, but in a way, I really like, I said, okay, well, you two are coming back the next event. And so they worked for me 3 months later. And we ended up, we're friends to this day. And they probably worked with me for 4 or 5 years through the rest of college and a couple years after. And we still joke that, like, I used to call them my number ones. But because I tell one, oh, you're my number one worker. And then I tell the other, and I, you know, play a game, and they were best friends. So they'd always laugh about it. But leadership wise, I you know, they're both in coaching now. And I don't know if I was the catalyst to get them into coaching, but I'm glad they got into it. I think San Diego State in general, both club teams have turned out so many coaches locally and wherever they go back to home to. And it's just something both programs preach to give back. Yeah, I guess I don't think of myself as a leader, even though I am a leader of a conference and the director of an event and director of other events. It's just more of the thing I'm most comfortable doing. It's like I was saying to you, you know, you develop, you realize what you're comfortable at. You got to realize what you're not good at. I may be able to lead, but I used to think I could do everything that was involved with leading, and then I realized I can't. So it makes it easier for me now to lead, because I say, no, that's their job. And then if they're not doing their job, I say, well, what the hell do I need you for if I have to do it? You know, that's a leader. You have to recognize, like, geez, I'm spending more time with, I don't know, ABC company helping them do their job when I'm paying them. You know, it doesn't make sense. So Yeah, leadership is, but to tie it into lacrosse, I think leadership is not only being the person that's the team captain that a coach can go to be the coach on the field, but knowing your role and executing your role, in my eyes, is a form of leadership. If you're given the task of, and I think that's why like a face-off midi has become so, what do they call it, a specialized position. But they're leading their team in the initial start of a game or after a goal. You're a great second line midi that is a great feeder. Well, then you're leading your midfield. It's just how you cycle it through. And I don't think you need a title to be a leader. Titles help, but I don't think you need to be a title to be a leader.
I think that's a good point, that titles, first of all, don't matter. But a big part of leadership is, and a certain type of leader is leading by example, doing everything right, taking on a task, and like you said, doing your job. When you find those people that do their jobs, you start to build that community and that network of people you want to work with. And then that builds that team, and they'll listen. It sounds like you have a lot of number one workers that will work for you. And that's how you're able to execute on a more grand scale than some of us even thought was possible. Because I'll tell you, my experience with all the tournaments have been flawless. And I've helped set up a few tournaments, and it's no easy task. So, Matt, it's cool how you do leadership, even if you don't necessarily consider yourself a leader. You've created your own style, and it's been successful. One of the big things that we've seen of leaders is they're able to identify goals or things they want to accomplish, and then gather a group to help accomplish that goal. What are some of the current goals that you have going on right now, Matt?
Oh, now you're asking me to think. Well, let's see. Outside of the MCLA duty of right now, MCLA wise, it's a wait and see, unfortunately, with many things tied to the pandemic. But briefly, in that regard, it's we're in a wait and see pattern with the national championship, because it's dependent on, do we even have teams to draw from? As a conference, we have our Southwestern Lacrosse Conference, or known as SLC, annual meeting this Saturday morning. And we had the teams sent, we did a survey, and today's the deadline. I was just looking at that before we got on our phone. And I think it was like 90% of our teams, 95% of the teams are not doing anything in the fall. And then 75% had no idea how the spring was going to be ruled. So it's somewhat of a scary time. It's somewhat of a very frustrating time. So those projects are kind of in limbo. And then for the EMW Foundation, the focus for me, for many reasons, which we don't have time to cover, but in general, the reason why I started this overtime conversation panel was that I was, like many Americans, was very frustrated with what went on. Was that Memorial Day weekend with the George Floyd killing, and all the subsequent things since then that we've all been bombarded with. Not being a outwardly type of marching, go to marches and such, even though they held them in San Diego. Speaking to an old roommate actually from Syracuse, who's a professor of, Dr. Opie is a professor of history, of Black history through food, which is interesting. He teaches at Babson College. And I was speaking to him, and I said, I had this idea, and I said, I just think, applying it to lacrosse, what if we just had a conversation? Like, we need more conversation. And that's kind of a buzzword around the entire subject, is like, we need open conversation. We need white, Black, all peoples of color to be conversing in a constructive way. And he encouraged me and kind of was like, you need to do that, you need to do that. And I was like, I don't know, I'm not. If anybody watches the show, I am not a host of a TV show or, of a video show online. But I have gained a little more confidence, gotten more comfortable doing it. And basically the idea is that we gather people in the lacrosse community at different levels, different experiences, different backgrounds, white, black, it doesn't matter what nationality, what the ethnicity. And we openly, and I asked them to openly speak about experiences with racism, things they're doing, if they're coaches, what are you doing with your programs to have that discussion? If you're an administrator, what are you doing in your administration roles? And it's been really, I don't know, selfishly for me, I'm like, man, it's helpful for me. And I always say, I don't know if we're reaching thousands of people, but if we reach one person, that's, to me, is great. And we have received feedback, and I've seen a couple of comments where it's like, oh, great show, but most of the ones are 2 and 3 paragraphs and like, wow, this made me think. And the fact that these people are saying and being so open and raw and forthcoming with information, and there's a few things that I'll share that I think we all should really sit down and take a look at ourselves. It's like, one, you have to first, it's like having an addiction. You got to first admit there's a problem. And I don't care who you vote for, but if you don't think there's a problem, then how are you going to be part of the solution? And there are still people that deny there's a problem. That's their right. Probably won't change their mind, but if you're wondering or if you're quiet and you don't want to speak the wrong thing, I encourage you to find someone to speak to, because coming from a good place and mistakenly saying something is okay. Because I don't have, as a black man, I don't have all the answers. I don't know anybody that I know that's a person of color or white that has all the answers. But I do know that through conversation, all people involved, anybody that's worried about humanity, which I think we all are, so it's tough. So it is, I'll put a shameless plug in here, but it's Overtime. It's called Overtime. It's on every Wednesday night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And we carry it through our EMW Foundation website, and Lax All-Stars and Lax Sports Network have both been kind enough to put it over their platforms. And we've done the 13th episode will air tomorrow night, and it's another good one. They're all good. They're all different, for instance, tomorrow's was a smaller group, and we have Gina Thomas, who is the head coach at Cincinnati, who's a 2-time world player for the U.S. women's team. And she's one of only 3 or 4 black head coaches in NCAA. Lars Tiffany, UVA, most recent national champion in 2019, and assistant coach for the Iroquois team in 2018. Mira Shane, who's an assistant coach at Michigan for the NCAA team at Michigan, because they do have a club. But she went there. She was a starting goalie, and is now returned. And she's involved with which is interesting. She's on the men's division diversity panel or something. So she's well connected there. Who else is on that? Oh, and then Brian Silcott, who's an old friend and competitor, and just world traveler of lacrosse. Has coached the Scotland international team, working with the Jamaica development program now. Has played at all different levels, NCAA and post-college club, and is just one of the great. I think of him as one of the great thinkers out there, because he always is well spoken. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, just those 4. Oh, I was the 5th. I kept thinking there's 5. but you know, you'll hear from them and what they're doing in their respective programs, and it's really interesting what they're doing at all three universities, and it's great that they're able to share that. And the one joke that came out of it was that, and it was funny because Lars Tiffany said something about, you know, what are you doing with your program to, you know, further educate, or I don't know what it was, but he said, well, I call 1-800, I'm a coach a lot. And he's like, I'm a coach at a school and I can't do that. You know, he goes, there needs to be a helpline right now. And I thought that was really funny. We all got a laugh of it. We're like, we kind of riffed on that for a while. We're like, yeah, there really could be a helpline for coaches right now, a 1-800 line. So yeah, I encourage, and I've, with that, Ryan, I've said to people of all levels, I'm like, hey, here's the links. Here you can embed it. It's not something the foundation owns. These are conversations I want you to take. And I had a friend that coaches a high school girls tennis team, and she's like, I'm having my players watch it. And I have other, you know, I'm using lacrosse as because that's my community, and our community, we work with them. But the issue is obviously well beyond lacrosse. It happens in lacrosse. Let's not fool ourselves. And that's part of the acceptance. It's like, you know, you've probably seen comments online, some of these posts, and people comment, and that's what kills me about social media. Like, boy, there's just a lot of just not listening. We're just jumping on a comment. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, why are you bringing politics in? It's like, it's humanity. And if you don't think there's racist things that have happened, talk to a person of color. We've all had, I've had it. It's been a while, but I've had things happen. It's only a couple of times that I noticed, but I've had people tell me, actually the first time it ever happened, it was my teammate said, did you hear that guy say that to you? You know, and they were two defensemen that took care of the other player, which was pretty cool. And then they told me after, they like roughed up. And I was like, damn, you guys roughed up. Okay, cool. You know, but yeah, I think that's the big issue now, because it is a national, besides the pandemic, it's a national thing we're dealing with. And I think our lacrosse community is in a unique situation as a sport, because we are small enough and connected enough that we can, I believe we can affect change. It's going to take a while and the results won't be seen for a while. It's not like it's going to be next year we're going to be at such a higher level, but we can make our game more inclusive. We can make our game more welcoming. We can make our game, why wouldn't we want to be more reflective of the true history of the sport? You know, that's the biggest thing. It's like, if you're involved in lacrosse, if you don't study the history and understand it, you're failing the sport, you're failing yourself. Because it is, what's the saying? It's not a lily white Northeastern prep school sport. You know, the only thing, part of that sentence that's right, it was Northeastern, but it's the indigenous peoples that create this. It's the spiritual aspects behind it for them are what matters. And I grew up in a time, and I assume your old coach, Chris Malone, probably had the same thing. He's younger than I am, but you grew up in a time that every season, every summer camp, and really then it was just seasons and summer camp. It wasn't club ball and all this stuff. You started off with a talk. The coach always spoke about the history of the game, the indigenous people, Native Americans, and how it was adapted. And you know, every coach had a way of saying it, but it was ingrained in you. Because I remember for me, I thought, well, geez, I'm pretty sure I have a great, I think it's two great, might be great grandmother. I forget how it goes in the family, but she was an Native American. And so that was my connection personally. And I always thought, well, cool, this sport's really close to me that way. That was how I grasped the concept. But one thing you'll anybody that watches the overtime shows, every episode is pretty much mentioned the need for the history of the game to be properly presented. And this is, Lars Tiffany was explaining, I think it was off the recording, we were just chatting, but explaining how he does it at Virginia and how he used to experience it when he was living in upstate New York. So yeah, I think that aspect of the game is getting reinstated. I know U.S. Lacrosse is doing things. I know the Iroquois themselves, if you follow their social media, they're doing some things. I can't say his name, I think I'm not supposed to say it, but there's a really good movie coming out, Ryan, that will hit soon. And it's from a longtime lacrosse short filmmaker, I call it. And I know him personally, but I just found this out on Monday, and I'm like, that's so cool. And he's like, and the person that told me said, I don't think I'm supposed to tell anybody. So I don't want to say his name, but let's just look for a really good movie from the historical roots. It should be coming out soon in the next couple of months. So, yeah.
Well, Matt, there's so much involved with your goals and the community and the impact that we have. Again, it's the same idea that I'm having with this as a leadership conversation. There's a whole conversation to be had about diversity, inclusion, and the empathy that's involved with the game. I think being an athlete and being on a team, you build a bond, and that's the same thing with the heritage of lacrosse. You have that brotherhood, you get together, and you've got more pressing matters than someone's background, where they're coming from. You have a task and you have a group of people that come together, and I'm so glad that you've built a conversation with some great leaders, and you're able to share with the rest of us how to have these conversations with our youth, how to have them with our own communities, so that we can better impact our futures, because that's what's most important, is having that positive impact. One of the things that I want to make sure that we hit on, Matt, is how can we help you? How can we support the foundation, overtime, everything that you're involved in? What can we do for you?
Oh my, Ryan. Well, let's start with the MCLA in general. You're a product of the MCLA, and I think any parent of a up and coming high school student, when you're getting to those college years considerations and such, having experienced a lot of different levels over the years, the MCLA is the right place for a lot of young men, and the WCLA is the right place for a lot of young women. And I encourage all parents and players to just open up their horizons and seek out more information about both organizations. I'll shamelessly plug the WCLA, which is the Women's Collegiate Lacrosse Association. Same concept. It's college club teams all across the country. I think they actually have more members than we do as the MCLA. But a lot of these situations are the right place for your child or for a player. And then there's plenty of NCAA organizations that are in the right place as well. It's just a matter of you've got to look at yourself and realize that, like, if you complain about going to practice 4 days a week, or you show up late, or you want to leave early, or you're double scheduling, I'm telling you right now, the NCAA is not the place for you. Many MCLA programs don't, is not the place for you. You can't even make that commitment. So, you have to know your place. I just lost my train. What was the other part of that question, Ryan?
How can we continue to support you with the foundation, overtime, everything else that you're involved in?
I mean, I appreciate that. We'll get back to the foundation. Will get back to organizing some tournaments and such. I don't do recruiting events. It's a personal choice. I've been asked to do recruiting. Why don't you have this, make it a recruiting event? I've always enjoyed going to tournaments and it being a tournament and just that, and you play to win that event. And I don't know, the fluff behind recruiting events is not for me. I respect the organizations that do it. It's just not for me. I'm always happy to help players and families get connected with people, but it's just not for me. So anytime you see one of those, come on out. I'll keep doing overtime as much as I can. I am looking currently for college students. I don't think, if you're a high school student, you want to join a panel, great. As a player, I'm looking for a bunch of players, basically, for 8 players for our next show. I'm happy to have a high school student. I just obviously need parent approval. But if you're a player and you like to, you don't have to have the answers. You don't have to be, you can be white, you can be black, you can be whatever nationality. And if you'd like to just be part of the conversation, you can email ot@emwf.org, ot@emwf.org, and we'll have you on. And then, hopefully I've got a couple international events that'll happen in the US that I can spread the word. I'll get back to you on once we know what's going on. We're just in the COVID hold. We're in the COVID hold. But yeah, please don't be afraid to ever reach out to me. I say this to your viewers. I do my best. I will answer questions. I do get some emails that I always chuckle at because I'm like, wow, I can actually help them. It's just, random questions or referrals and things like that. I don't know everybody, but I think I can get you to the right people. Because usually the answer is not coming from me. It's just, I just know who to point you in the right direction. So, yeah.
Awesome, Matt. Well, thank you so much again for being a part of our conversation today. Really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you, Ryan, and best of luck with this platform. I think what you're doing is good. You're building something here, and folks should, join you in your journey. And I'm happy to support you any way I can as well. So keep up the good work and enjoy.
Awesome. Thank you.